Okay, looks like we're ready to roll. Let's see, let me do a quick head count. Looking good. Okay. Good evening, council, guests. I want to call the meeting to order, and I can confirm that we have quorum. Councilor Armour is not with us tonight. He's away on vacation. And this is the second year in a row we're missing our traditional council meeting down in the great village of Port Sydney. So hard to believe it's been 2 years since COVID's done that to us. Anyways, I think it's quite appropriate that, as this would be the night we'd be in Port Sydney, that we'll ask Councillor Fitzgerald to read our land acknowledgement statement.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm happy to do so. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions towards real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations.
Thank you, Councillor. I have a resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that the regular council meeting agenda dated Monday, July 26, 2021 be adopted as printed and circulated. All in favor? Are there disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is to clarify a pecuniary interest from a previous meeting. On the June 28th, 2021 regular council meeting on confidential report DEB 2021-75 Ontario Land Tribunal, or personal reasons due to a family member works for the party. That clarifies that situation, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, we're going to jump right into our invited presentation tonight and welcome the District CAO Julie Stevens and Blair Melvin to give us a presentation on the Huntsville OPP Detachment Board. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano, and thank you, Council, for having us here tonight. So we're going to go pretty quickly through the presentation, which we had uploaded for you, just to walk you through the detachment boards and why we've got them or why there's a requirement for them, and really seeking feedback from you this evening. And so one of the things, just before I start, or maybe you can share, Blair, your first screen, and then I'll just make one comment before I move into the agenda. So one of the things that one of the councillors mentioned as we were doing, so we've been to all the lower tiers now, and you know, the district pays quite a bit for policing, and we've talked about how we haven't had a voice. And so I think this is a first step towards a voice in some of the matters relating to policing. Next slide. So on today's agenda, we'll go quickly through the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019 as they relate to detachment boards. We'll look at the composition requirements, the district proposal, and then seeking feedback from the lower tiers. And I'll tell you a little bit about next steps. Next slide. And so in March 2019, Ontario passed the Comprehensive Ontario Police Services Act, Bill 68, and then they also established the Community Safety and Policing Act 2019, which is CSPA, which is the acronym that we refer to. And then this year, early in 2022, the Solicitor General wanted to start work towards bringing the CSPA into force. And they're talking about early 2022 for implementation, but there's been no firm deadlines that they've established at this point. I think there's the length of time to get people to even just put in proposals has been longer than they thought. So I'm not sure that that's going to happen. We certainly have given them feedback that
Can we fix this?
Hang on just a second, Julie. Julie, are you still there? Julie, are you still there? Blair, do you want to, thanks for stopping, share. I think maybe we've lost Julie and there was a little bit of echoey feedback. Maybe she's trying to re-log on.
Mayor Terziano,
Yep.
perhaps Councillor Withy could put his mute off as well. That might help as well a bit.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Blair, do you happen to know if Julie's just having trouble?
For you, Mayor Terziano, I believe so. It appeared as though she was frozen, and I think she might have been reaching for her cell phone, but I have not yet received a message, so I'm awaiting that anxiously.
Okay, well, we'll give her a couple minutes and see if she can log back in.
Might be a good time for me to ask when we can get back in person.
We will have that discussion soon.
Okay.
I will just remind everybody to keep their mutes on when they aren't speaking, because it does tend to generate some feedback sometimes. There she is.
I can't yet see you folks, so just one moment. Sorry about that. My computer shut down.
That's okay. You can pick up where you left off whenever you're ready.
Unfortunately, I can't really see anything.
Oh.
Hang on 1 second.
We can see you all right and we can hear you, but
Nothing. That's a first for me, everybody, just so you know. Okay, I think I was on the slide of the context, right? Blair, is that where I was? Okay, good. So I think we were just talking about how not sure when the implementation is. One of the things that we gave them feedback on is, you know, if you bring these boards into place in 2022, and we have a whole, you know, we have elected officials on them, and it's an election year, you just finished getting the board up and running and trained, and then you'd have a new council, which could in effect change the board representation from the elected officials. And so they were taking that back under consideration. What we're really dealing with today is Section 67 of the CSPA, which deals with the OPP detachment boards. And what the requirement, and it's a brand new requirement, is that there must be a board for every OPP detachment that delivers services for a municipality, policing services for a municipality or First Nation. There were boards in the past under the previous Police Services Act, but it was under Section 10, and the district, and it wasn't consistent. It wasn't required across all of the detachments. And so the district has, this is the first board process that we'll be going through. And so it's new work. Next slide. So the District of Muskoka is complex. We've got two police detachments, one in Bracebridge, one in Huntsville. And so within the Bracebridge board, there's 4 municipalities within the District of Muskoka that receive services, and then 2 First Nations. The Huntsville detachment, by comparison, is relatively more or less complex, I should say, with just the town of Huntsville and Lake of Bays being serviced. And then as well, Southern Georgian Bay OPP detachment delivers services for the southern portion of Georgian Bay Township. And so that board will be in conjunction with 4 other municipalities from the county of Simcoe, as well as the First Nation of Beausoleil. Next slide. So the district, as the upper tier, will have administrative responsibility for the boards of both the Bracebridge and Huntsville detachment. So the complexity involved in providing that administration for those 2 boards. And then as well, we'll be a party to the board for the Southern Georgian Bay detachment as well, but likely more of a participatory nature than direct administration, although that's under consideration as well by all of those groups. And then the one thing, we did have consultation with the province on the idea of detachment boards, and they wanted to provide some flexibility, but also outline some minimum standards. And so here we've listed the 3 that are identified within the CSPA section 67, I believe, and that's a minimum size of 5. But there is no maximum size, 20% community representation, and 20% provincial representation. And the provincial representation would be appointed by the ministry. They gave no real requirements for the community representation other than it could not be an elected official and it could not be a municipal employee. And then at this point, really what they're seeking from us from the district is a proposal on what we think to identify the number of seats as well as the composition. So what municipality, et cetera. But we don't have to name names at this point. And so next slide. We're going to go into a bit about why they went this direction. I mentioned that the district certainly has been seeking a voice or a stronger voice on policing, and that's certainly how we as staff feel like there is an improvement there that would likely come forward with the boards. But the one thing I will say from the framework is their intent was to provide or ensure greater civilian governance. And so one of the things that they focused on in the framework is that it would ensure that each municipality and First Nation had the opportunity to represent their local perspectives, needs, and priorities. And the intent of bringing together both municipalities and First Nations together was to collaborate on efforts to enhance community safety. And then the last one was really about enhancing transparency and really providing an efficient delivery of OPP services. As you can imagine, with some municipalities, if they've gone in previous Services Act, they've gone with Section 10 board, there could be 4 boards if for a police detachment that's servicing them. So this would certainly be a more coordinated effort amongst all of those. Next slide. So this slide is, we added sort of after the first couple of meetings, and it really provides sort of the framework or governance overview. And so on the bottom of the slide, you can see the dotted line represents an advisory relationship, and the reporting relationship is identified with a solid line. And so on the right-hand side, in the middle, you can see the OPP detachment boards sit there, and it's in its advisory capacity to the OPP detachment, and then as well into this governance advisory council. And so there's going to be one council for the whole province, and they'll have advice will be coming from the detachment boards into that council. And then they'll also provide advice not only to the Solicitor General, but also to the OPP Commissioner. And then if you look at the left-hand side of the slide, you can see that the reporting relationships will remain the same, meaning that the OPP detachment reports into the OPP Commissioner and they're into the Solicitor General. And so one of the things that we've been highlighting is that the OPP detachment boards will not be involved in operational matters, I should say. And so you'll see that a bit more on the next slide when we get a bit more into the roles and responsibilities. So next slide. So these are sort of high level responsibilities that have been identified within the Act. So it's consulting on the selection of the detachment commander, determining the objectives and priorities. And so that's bringing in that local perspective and policies, and that's in consultation with the detachment commander, monitoring the performance of the detachment commander, reviewing reports, considering the community safety and well-being plan that's been adopted by the municipality or First Nation. And so the district has awarded the contract and started the work on the community safety and well-being plan. We expect that to be out in early 2022, I believe. And so I consider this one a pretty big step for us. So we're going to have this comprehensive community safety and well-being plan, and the board will have to have consideration for what that is related to policing. So how can the police services fit in with that plan that we're going to come forward with. And that's also the way I believe that the other boards within Bracebridge and Southern Georgian Bay will also, it'll be more cohesive because they all have to respond to that plan. And then the last thing is that there will be an annual report that's provided to the municipalities and band councils related to the objectives of the OPP and how the board did in that year. Next slide. So from a composition principles perspective, what district staff did, and I forgot to do this at top, but Tina Kilborn is the CIU team lead, and she has been instrumental in all of the research that she's done and putting forward these presentations as well. She's just on vacation this week, or else she'd be here. And she did a lot of review of previous boards under the Section 10 model, and as well we've done at least 2 or 3 sessions with the province, consulting with them. And based on all of that feedback, we came up with 3 principles. And so the first one is to go with a streamlined approach and have one municipal-based board per OPP detachment. There's some, municipalities up north that could be considering 2 boards just because of how far apart in geography they are. And we're not recommending that given the size of Muskoka. And the second part was that in order to promote efficient decision-making, to keep the board as small as possible. And then the last one was to have equal representation across the municipalities on the board. Next slide. And so for the Huntsville detachment and its board, it's a pretty simple proposal that we're putting forward. It would be a minimum sized board, so five members. Because there's only 2 towns that have been, or 1 township and 1 town that are being represented from a policing perspective. It's a fairly simple model. So 1 elected official, 1 community rep per municipality. And then that represents 2 members for 2 elected officials and 2 community reps, and then 1 provincial appointee. I will say that one of the pieces of feedback that we've been given, and I think honestly it's a fair one, is that the district chair isn't represented in any of this. And so there may be some consideration by staff moving forward that maybe the size of the board would be bumped by 1 to add a district chair as a representative as well in the model. And so that's a piece of feedback that we're taking back from a staff perspective. And so it's a really straightforward model in this case. I will say that having 1 elected official and 1 community rep by municipality is a fairly consistent approach. So the Southern Georgian Bay detachment, that is the recommendation that came forward by all the staff and was approved through council in July. And some of the feedback that we've received from the municipalities for the Bracebridge detachment has been similar. So, the consideration is that they'd like 1 elected official and 1 community rep. And so if that's the case, if that's what comes forward in the final determination, then it would be consistent across all 3 boards. Next slide. And so just on appointing seats, the Finance and Corporate Services Committee was the committee that heard or endorsed this representation in the proposals coming forward. And the consideration was that the elected officials sitting on the board would be the head of the lower tier, or they could choose an alternate district councillor if they so chose. And as well, that the elected officials and community members representing the lower tiers would be nominated by the lower tiers and then appointed by resolution at the district council. Next slide. And so into next steps. So after we're finished consulting with the lower tiers, we'll compile all of the information and then make a recommendation to the Finance and Corporate Services Committee and then through to council after that. And then following that approval, we'll submit a proposal to the Solicitor General. And then following that, really look at the administration, resourcing and funding. So these meetings will be open meetings. And so that will involve obviously agendas, reports, we'll be streaming and live, open to the public. And so and as I mentioned at the top, this is new work for us. And so I do anticipate that we'll need staff resources to administer, 2, if not 3 boards. And so that will come forward as part of our 2022 budget. We have done a submission to the Minister for AMO to talk about the fact that, the district's in a bit of a different situation with 3 different boards. And so I'm not positive that they're considering funding for all municipalities, but maybe they should consider it in the case where there's just so many boards involved. So anything over 1, perhaps they would provide funding for, given the complexity that we've got here. And next slide. And so really what we're seeking is feedback. We don't need a motion of council. It's really just seeking feedback from the various councillors if they've got any questions, or what they think of the proposal that's being put forward today. And that's really the end. There's one last slide, but it's more about what the other reports are, and certainly council can click on those if they want to, or you can reach out to me or Tina Kilborn, and we can certainly provide you the links to those different reports that have come through Finance and Corporate Services. But really at this point, back to you, Mayor, and seeking any feedback that there might be.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll just get Blair to stop sharing that, and then I can see everybody. Great. Okay, council questions. And I see we will start with Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the question I have through you, Your Worship, to Julie is with regards to the municipal representation and why it would be either head of council or a district councillor and not a ward councillor that would be on that board. And also the question of why the consideration to have the district chair sit on both boards, I guess, or maybe in this case, all three boards. I'm just wondering if you could rationalize the reasoning behind the selection being either head of council or district councillors. Julie, could you do that for me? Thanks.
Sure, through you, Mayor Terziano. So we really did think that having a district councillor, so mayor or an alternate district councillor, provided a really great opportunity to marry up the local perspectives, because they sit on the lower tier, so they've got that local perspective, but at the same time they understand the district and the complexities of the district and working through those, particularly when we get to things that could be considered for. There's different considerations for what's coming from the other boards, right? So we'd have information flowing from these other boards that the district councillors will hear about. And I think that provides a nice opportunity for cohesiveness there and coordinated efforts. I think, as I mentioned, all the meetings are public. And so certainly if there was a councillor at the lower tier who did not feel that their concerns were being met or addressed, those could be done through that public process and or fed through in a delegation process as well, or through their representative of district council. So that was really the thinking on that one, Councillor Thompson. And as far as having the district chair involved, really what we felt we haven't made a final proposal yet, but one of the things that we thought about was that the district ultimately is responsible for policing across the District of Muskoka. And we thought that, having the district chair sit on, at this point, it would just be the boards that are in the District of Muskoka, so both the Huntsville and the OPP, would provide that really the collection of sort of a mind that's sitting on both and really to create a coordinated effort across the policing of the District of Muskoka. So that was the thinking on that one, and really just elevating it to the level that it's supposed to be, or that it's required. It's the way it's talked about within the CSPA is that the district's responsible for policing.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Julie, for the presentation. Very quick question. It is with respect to the citizen appointment. And I'm curious, given, this is citizen accountability, if there had been any thought as to what the process looks like for appointing the citizen reps, whether that's, a public process, application. I know there aren't a lot of reps, but I think it's a really critical role and that we get it right. So any thoughts on that would be appreciated.
Thanks, through you, Mayor. So we have given that some thought, mostly just recently. We were sort of wondering if it would be, so our desire is that we would have a skills-based or, a more diverse voices coming from the community members. And so what we were thinking was that we would come forward with not dissimilar to what we've done with the inclusion, diversity, equity, and anti-racism, advisory group, setting sort of standard, not necessarily standards, but basically it's almost an application form and what we're looking for from that perspective. And then I think the overarching would be that the district would establish those criteria. We'd help with the administration of the application process. And I think it would be vetted through, because the nomination we are saying is coming through the lower tier at this point. And so I think that's the process. So really we can get members who are representing maybe things that aren't represented necessarily by our elected officials.
That's good. Thanks, Julie.
Councillor Withey?
Thank you, Your Worship. And thanks, Julie, for this. I'm just been reading the responsibilities here. So this is more, looks like, and I know there's still information to come. I know this isn't complete. But this isn't like a police services board where you're going to get on some board that's investigating a shooting or something. This is more selection of detachment commander, determining objectives and priorities. Okay, so I had another question and I completely lost it. So couldn't have been that important. Thanks.
That was an easy answer for you then. I don't see other hands, but just one more question, sort of following up on Councillor Thompson. With the district chair, if we were to add the district chair to the detachment board, then the 5-member board would lose the 20% community and the 20% provincial appointee, if indeed that board went up to a 6-member board. How would that play out?
So the 2 members that we have for community would still be, that'd be over the 20% because it would be 33, but we would have to bump up the provincial representation by 1 to meet the minimum. We'd make an application to say we only need 1 and see if they would be willing. They said they may negotiate downwards, so we'll see if they'll do that.
And I did watch your presentation to Lake of Bays out of curiosity, because they will be our partners in this. And I know there was a question about possibly appointing an alternative to the elected official, much like we do at district council right now if someone's missing. And I heard your answer to them, but maybe supply it for our council as well.
Yeah, sure. I thought it was an interesting perspective, right? So the perspective was if we don't have board meetings all that often, but you wouldn't want to miss one. And so is it appropriate to have an alternative member appointed at the same time, that member would obviously go through all the training, etc. And I think it's an interesting perspective. On the one hand, the number of board meetings that we have will be established, I believe, by the board. And I think what we've seen is it's traditionally it's once a quarter, so 4 times a year. So would there be could we do it so that people aren't missing? But I don't have any problem with appointing an alternate member as well. I think that's an interesting perspective. We've certainly seen that it works at district council. So I think we'll take that as feedback.
Is it likely to be our decision per board, or would it be the province's decision, do you think?
Well, for the alternate member, or whether they'll accept an alternate? Is that what you mean? Sorry, I didn't hear your answer.
Yeah, whether the province would allow it, I guess.
Yeah, you know what? We haven't asked for their opinion on that. So we'll put it forward in the proposal to say that we would like an alternate, and they may say no, we don't think that's necessary, but we can always put it forward.
I see Councillor Fitzgerald has his hand up now.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I would be delighted to ask Julie a question. Thanks, Julie, for your presentation. I get where Councillor Thompson is coming from, and I think the mayor was maybe alluding to the same fact. The elected officials who sit on the board, that little paragraph seems to limit who we have on the board. I know we have a very diverse council, and if we limit ourselves by that much, what if we have someone who maybe isn't the best person to sit on the board, but they are the head of council or district council? And I understand you're doing it from a point of cohesiveness, to have things run smoothly between the district and the municipalities and the townships. But We don't seem to have any disconnect in that regard with the reports that we get from district. So I'm wondering if we should not limit ourselves and just make it a member of council.
So I'll take the feedback back and do that consideration for district council.
Councillor Schumacher?
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, through your worship. And I guess to maybe follow up on Nancy's and sort of in that same line or vein of conversation is that I guess what we might be looking for that we might be missing from our elected officials would be our community appointment. So say we want a strong maybe mental health background or a strong LGBTQ background, or we would look to somebody from a community standpoint that maybe would then fill that role to be able to sit at the board level.
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly what we would be considering. Exactly that type of, and that came out in the consultation process as well in early 2020 with the province. There was certainly a lot of opinions. And so I have, Tina was, one of her follow-ups last week was to call the ministry just to see if they'd had any proposals yet on the skills, that would be favorable in the community representative. So I haven't heard back of whether she heard from the province or even if anybody else is further ahead than us related to, the previous world of Section 10 boards that we can borrow from shamelessly to help us move along in that process.
Okay, I don't see any more hands, so thank you for the presentation and enlightening all of council on where we're going possibly next. And we'll wait to hear our instructions.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Okay, council, we have no deputations tonight. But I do have a resolution moved by Councillor Stone, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the regular council meeting minutes dated June 28, 2021 be adopted as printed and circulated. Questions? All in favor? And that carries. Deputy Mayor Alcock, are you still there? Hopefully. We will go to the Huntsville Public Library Board meeting of June 8th, which I was not at that meeting. We did have one since in July, but I guess their minutes haven't been presented to council yet. All I can say about the library right now is they are starting their reopening plans, much like our CAO will be outlining our reopening plans at the town. But if there's any specific questions about the library, I will try to answer them. And seeing none, we will go to the BIA Board of Management. Councillor Stone.
Thank you. Yeah, if you've been downtown lately, the joint's jumping. Tourists are shopping, the merchants are busy, and so I don't have a lot to report. The board did want to know what the Muskoka moments, as we've called them, that are going to be located on the sidewalks, what they consist of and what are we getting. And I'm not talking about the gardens that are just off the sidewalk, like in front of Town Hall. I'm talking the ones right on the sidewalk. And Director Hernan joined me at the meeting, and we explained that there'll be Muskoka chairs, both adult and kid-sized chairs, large boulders, big ones that are 2 feet by 2 feet by 5 feet. And there'll be a bunch of those at each of these locations, and so a whole bunch of planters. And all of these things, including the boulders, will be removed in the late fall for the snow plowing purposes. So there was some discussion about that and how we can enhance it to make it look beautiful at each one of these vignettes in between the trees. But I think it'll end up looking beautiful for sure. And that's about it, unless I have any questions.
Any questions from Councillor Stone? I know we do have a streetscape update coming later on, but there are questions, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Stone. And I apologize. I know that Deputy Mayor Alcock has beaten me to the punch on both these occasions, but I seem to be getting ahead. So thank you for that. A question I have, how are the merchants finding staffing levels downtown? I've been hearing from some different people, not a lot, but the occasional one, and I know this is not necessarily unique to downtown, but the duration of times and that kind of thing. But are merchants generally having trouble with staffing at this point, Councillor Stone? Is that something you could comment on?
Absolutely. The situation is almost tragic. I heard from one restaurateur who, is calling her friends and enlisting them to come and serve customers, trying to get staff any way possible. It's a real difficulty. It's a catch-22, right? You're now really busy, and trying to have staff is very difficult. So it's a struggle. So anyone that's looking for work, it's out there.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Stone, for the update. Actually, my question might be better placed a bit later on the streetscape update, but I did find it curious about the removal of the boulders in the winter time. It seems like a massive effort, and in some respects the Muskoka moments are supposed to be year round, right? Not just summer moments, but year-round moments. Like winter in the main street is pretty lovely. So should I ask that question later, or did you have a discussion around that?
Councillor Stone, do you want me
I have had a
to Director
discussion.
Hernan for that, or?
He's welcome to join us and explain. I asked the questions about the boulders myself. So if you want to have Steve come and explain that, that's fine.
Either way, thanks.
Steve?
Well, as we talked about when Councillor Stone asked the same question and the BIA, it's for snow removal. I mean, certainly if they wanted the boulders left, they could certainly be left. But if they want the snowbanks totally removed in certain areas, the intent would be to remove what we could for snow removal reasons. You're still going to have Kent Park for your Christmas displays. You're still going to have your banners up on the streetlights. You're going to have your wreaths or whatever you want. But that the whole concept is it's removable furniture, can be set up any way we want, can be changed around from year to year. If they want to see something different, if a business wants to expand out to the sidewalk, if they don't the year after. So the concept is it's all removable. Does it have to be removed? It doesn't have to be if that's the direction. It's just if you've got a boulder there, we can't remove the snow there.
Okay, thank you. A quick follow-up on that, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you for that response. And was the BIA happy about that? They thought that was tickety-boo?
So if I can respond to that. So the discussion was around some of the early pictures that were drawn up about streetscape. And they had these lush gardens with boulders and chairs amongst the trees. And the lush gardens wouldn't last the winter with the salt on the roads and the snow plowing. So sadly, we will have to enhance it with barrels and other types of flower pots that can be removed. But as Steve said with the boulders, I was really surprised. And they said, it's really no big deal. They come in with a flatbed truck and just load them on, load them off. I asked, is it going to hurt the sidewalk? They said no. So, and I like the flexibility to, you have one here, maybe the business didn't like it there or wants one there. We can always adapt.
Thank you, both.
When climate change brings about Florida winters in Huntsville, we'll probably be able to leave them out there.
Yeah.
Councillor Stone, do you want to go ahead with Committee of Adjustment?
Absolutely. So there was two that were of note. There was an application to increase a boathouse by 22% over what is allowed on Ferry Lake, and committee unanimously denied that. There was another application that came back. We had asked for to see some changes, and it came back with very little changes. Aside from that, the other ones sailed through without any issue.
Okay, questions? Seeing none. Councillor Weed, Huntsville Lake Bay's Chamber of Commerce update.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we had our meeting last week that we had a really robust discussion around, like I've been talking about, we're undertaking the strategic planning of the chamber. A lot of interesting questions have come out of that, and in terms of the relationship of the chamber with the town, and what's the right level of support, what's the right amount of marketing, how much tourism. So it's big questions that we're throwing about, and some really interesting ideas are coming out of it. It's different things like perhaps a trailer, a pop-up trailer for tourism services to the more hot spots where things are happening, right? It's the idea of, rather than hoping that tourists will pop into where you are, you go to where they are, and really kind of promote the other things that are happening in Huntsville in the area, Lake of Bays, et cetera. So a lot of good discussion. It's ongoing still. We're having kind of a follow-up part 2, kind of to digest everything we've heard, and to circle back and figure out what the best way forward is going to be. But like I said, a lot of questions, a lot of strategic development questions. So it was a great meeting, and it's a really good engaged board that really has a lot of interesting ideas, and it's a pleasure to be on. So I'm looking forward to seeing how we unfurl some of these ideas and the new direction. So more to come, but that's it for now.
Questions? I actually have one question. How has the Chamber's membership been this year in 2021? I know in 2020 there was struggles, and just wondering what their membership drive has been like this year.
It's actually been fairly steady. I mean, like with anything, there are some challenges coming out of this year, but I think there's been a little bit more of an effort to try and reconnect with who's here, right? In a way, this has been a time for not just businesses, but across the board, whether it's families or what have you, to really figure out what people's roles are and what their opportunities are. So I think the Chamber's had a good chance to reconnect with a lot of those businesses that have been here the whole time, and the membership's been fairly steady. There will need to be a little bit more of a concerted effort for sure going into 2022, but that's sort of on the books, and I think so. In addition to what I was talking about before, there is a bit of a push. You can tell there's a bit of a push to in essence reconnect with the membership and really work on a little bit more business to business, sort of your classic Chamber of Commerce roles. So that was a part of the discussion as well. So they're all kind of tied together, those questions, but yeah, the membership is still remarkably hanging in there, so it's a good thing.
I certainly noticed that the town hall has opened the exterior door off of the square by Partners Hall there, so that the tourism kiosk just inside can operate. So that's great. Even before we've opened the door to our own municipal services, we've allowed them to do that so that they can be front and center. So hopefully that's working well for them as well. Municipal accommodation tax, our meeting, which was scheduled for this past week, has been bumped to next week, so I don't have any new update on that one. So we will keep going, and I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Withey. Be it resolved that the General Committee meeting minutes dated June 30th, 2021, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Questions? All in favor? And that carries. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Deputy Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that the Planning Committee meeting minutes dated July 14th, 2021, and the recommendations contained therein be hereby adopted as printed and circulated. Deputy Mayor Alcock, would you like to highlight anything from that meeting?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be brief. We didn't have a lot of items before us, but we did have a couple of lengthy discussions about the first two items. The first one was a simple application for the creation of one new rural lot, and staff was recommending denial after a lengthy discussion around whether or not this was precedent setting and all sorts of issues, whether it was in a settlement area. Committee felt that, in fact, the application had merit and ended up approving that application. The second one was a zoning bylaw amendment that staff were recommending approval. There was a lot of public reaction to this. It was with respect to 46 Haynes Road, and where we've already approved 36 townhouses, and this application was for an additional 38, as well as 80 dwelling units to be contained within 2 4-story multiple residential buildings. The density wasn't a lot, wasn't more than the original application, but it was different, and therefore required a zoning amendment. The neighbors in the surrounding area around Serenity Place had many issues, and in fact, on the whole, we're requesting that it be deferred by 1 month to allow them to discuss the issues of concern with the applicant and allow it to come back after those discussions, such as issues around blasting. Not sure what the municipality can do, but that was what was a significant issue. Issues around the tree line, development above or below the tree line, height, and about the pedestrian walkway and the traffic around that. And then speaking of traffic, the additional traffic created by the development. So committee agreed to defer the application by 1 month, and we expect it to come back in August. And the last but not least was an update on our community planning permit process. And at this point, I believe that we're going to get a very rough first draft coming to Planning Committee in August. That's my report.
Questions, council? Seeing none, you heard the motion. All in favor? That carries. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Wiebe, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. Be it resolved that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the contribution agreement attached as Appendix A to Report Development 2021-84 with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs for the Rural Economic Development Program. And Scott Oval is with us, I believe, and this is about a grant we've received with respect to streetscape. Is there anything you want to highlight on that, Scott?
No, I think it's the report's pretty self-explanatory. It was a partnership with the BIA, so as much as we wanted to include as much capital infrastructure we could into that grant, we did have to include some softer items that were focused on activating and programming the downtown throughout the project, and that's the reasoning behind the breakdown that's identified in the report. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council? I have one question, Scott, and with the BIA share of that that they're using for mural, I guess, artistic things downtown, is that something they'll be putting the money to this summer or next summer or ongoing?
It's actually a partnership with the BIA and the Huntsville Festival of the Arts, so the program's actually underway. So for the purposes of the grant, it's not a direct cash influx to the BIA. We would actually manage the invoices. It's just when we wrote the grant, it had to be identified as a program being run through them and their contribution towards it.
But it is ongoing now. This is partly for this year's.
Yes, so it's if anyone's been downtown, the canoe mural project that's down Rivermore Park that HFA's done a great job on that. Sorry for I wasn't as clear in my first response, Your Worship. So it'll be active as long as we can keep it active, and then the hope is that'll be able to be reused moving forward. So
great. Okay. All in favor? And that carries. Reports from municipal officers. I have a reopening plan, step 3. Madam CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as outlined in the report, as of July the 16th, the province did move us into step 3 of the reopening plan. And along with that came some changes to the regulations. So staff took the time to review the regulation, looked at our reopening plan for the town of Huntsville, and adjusted the chart accordingly, which is attached to the report before you this evening. The other thing that we really focused on was opening the municipal buildings, pardon me, and transitioning staff back to the workplace. So as I reported to council previously, regulation 8220 stipulated that employers shall ensure that their employees work from home unless it's impossible to do so. So the town of Huntsville adhered to that requirement within the regulation. But with the changes to moving to step 3 and the changes to regulation, which is now 36420, that provision was actually removed from the regulation. So one would seem to understand that the province probably feels that, you know, at this point in time, it's safe for people to report back to the workplace. So in discussions with staff and the senior team, I have given direction for staff to transition back into the building over the past couple weeks, so last week and this week. And we are looking at an opening to the public on August the 3rd, which is next Tuesday. So unless something really goes off the rails and based on our medical officer of health recommendation, we will be proceeding with opening on August 3rd. We've also indicated in the report that Dr. Gardner did have a letter of instruction that still indicated that staff should work from home. The health unit still stands behind that letter. However, they will continue to monitor that with respect to the Delta variant and the progress. They're watching that closely. But at this point in time, we feel it is very safe for staff to return to the workplace. And we certainly have had a desire from our residents to have the doors open so that they can have services in person. So I do feel very strongly it's time. We are prepared. And as of next Tuesday, we will be ready to go. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Denise. So Denise, when you say opening up, are we talking about the entire building, both the town hall and the Summit Center? Are we talking about all our facilities open to the public? Are they completely open?
So through your worship, sir, I should have confirmed that. It's the administrative buildings so it would be the town hall, the civic center, it would be Medill, and it would be the Huntsville Fire Hall. They would be opening to the public. As you're aware, the library opened last week. I think it was the 20th. The library actually opened to the public. With respect to the Canada Summit Center, there's still quite a few restrictions on how programs can be run. And we're obviously monitoring that very closely. So at this point in time, the Canada Summit Center will be by appointment only. And that is outlined in the chart just to specify when the openings will occur. But the administrative offices will be opening to the public.
Councillor Stone, I think you were next.
Thank you. Can you give us any direction about Algonquin Theatre?
Sure, through you, your worship. I've had discussions with Director Babineau, and I certainly, with the mayor's permission, would invite her to join us on the screen. What I can tell you is that they are planning, obviously, effective July 16th, if my memory is correct, we technically could have had 200 people in the theater as of July 16th, based on the provisions of the regulation. But if you wouldn't mind, your worship, I'd like to pass this over to Director Babineau to provide a detailed explanation.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Terziano, yes, we have recalled Matt Huddlestone to return back to the theater. We don't have an opening date as of yet because we still need to go through a number of restriction steps to get him back to work. He will return to work on Tuesday, August 3rd. And then we need to meet some of the local health department protocols and a return to play document and get those approvals. So we have a number of steps to step through, but we will have a report as to a date that the theater will open in the very near future.
Good. Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, through you, your worship, and Simone may want to stay on this one. Mine's going to be, of course, the community halls, Utterson Hall, Aspiden. I mean, some I've had calls around, could a turkey dinner at 50% be a go by October? Could the, I've had calls around people have passed away and we want to do a celebration of life in those particular halls I understand at stage 3, we are at 50% capacity for those halls. Is that something that, say, we're looking at September, October, could be a go?
Through you, Mayor Terziano, I can certainly answer that. Each of those items are going to be dealt differently. Each of them are going to need return to play protocols to be met. We need the SMDHU to be on board and give us approval. So our staff is receiving those calls. They're wading their way through them. They're trying to make sure that we're meeting the protocols and the regulations from the health, from first the province. Because each one of those is a different set of rules. And because it's a different location and because some of them have staff and some of them don't, there's many different rules to go through. So we're working through all of those. And then we need permission from the SMDHU with a return to play document with each one. So there are multiple steps this time to get each one of those spaces open. We're working through those, and certainly each one is taking a little bit of extra time because we are needing the fine details and going back and forth with SMDHU. Ultimately, the goal would be to have all of those sites open for September, October, for sure. So we're trying to accommodate the needs of what our community is looking for. We are having staff return, and so we needed HR to have some of those notices sent out. So we're reacting very quickly, but it is taking us a little bit of time to make sure that we have all of those ducks in a row and make sure that everybody has what they need in order to step forward. So we are inundated with calls. We are certainly, our community is excited to be back and we are thrilled. So we will respond as quickly as we can. And even if it's to put some people on hold, we're trying to get through, we're trying to get their information from them, trying to help them work through the list of items that need to be done. But yes, September, October is definitely September, I think more than October even.
Okay, just for follow-up, so yeah, obviously something maybe with food is going to be a little different than, say, the badminton group at the Port Sydney Hall that just wants to get going.
Through you, Mayor Terziano, some programs can't take place. So there are some, very strict rules about what we can and cannot do. Card games, for example, from our seniors euchre group, there's some rules, there's some things that can't happen. So some of that is going to be phased in as we're allowed to. So some of those are being stopped or modified through the province regulation. Others are through SMDHU, but we're trying to make sure that we've got all those ducks in a row.
Councillor Weed.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick bit of feedback. I think my feedback would be, I hope we're not too, maybe not eager is not the word, but too strict on trying to get everyone back to the office per se. I think if we listen to a little bit of Bob Stone's previous comments from the downtown merchants, I think people have found a real taste for working from home. And I just hope that we don't suffer the same fate of not being able to hang on to staff because we are requiring them to be somewhere where they'd rather, maybe they could probably gain employment by staying back home and doing it remotely for someone else. So that's just a quick bit of feedback. I hope that we've got some flexibility built into our plan. Thanks.
Madam CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in response to Councillor Weed's comment, we absolutely are being very cautious and aware of how a lot of people have been working from home for over the past year. So, we have transitioned staff in over a 2-week period. Those who do require a little bit of time, as Director Babineau said, to get their ducks in a row, we absolutely are an accommodating workplace, and we have worked with them very closely to make sure that we can do that. So I can assure you that we are excited that people are coming back. It's finally nice to hear voices in the hallway and laughter. It's been a long time. It's been pretty lonely in here. So I can assure you that we are certainly being accommodating where necessary.
Okay, and Councillor Stone, just because you asked the question a little bit earlier about when we would get back to meeting in person as a council, I think much like Simone outlined in the different return to play, so to speak, rules and regulations, I think that for council, I hope to see us get to the end of August and make sure nothing sort of slides backwards. And then maybe start having the conversation about when we return to the council chambers. I know that the clerks and the IT are working on getting our council chambers reset for webcasting when we come back. And just saw a demonstration today. I believe that won't be ready before October. So chances are we won't go back before October because we won't be able to webcast live until that time. But we'll see how that works out. But I hope to see the end of August and make sure that we're still moving forward as far as COVID goes before making any hard decisions for our return to in-person. But unless council has any feelings, strong feelings otherwise, that's the time frame I'd see now. Okay. We weren't doing a resolution there, were we? No, that was an information report. Bylaws. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved, the bylaw numbers 2021 51, 52, 54, and 55 be reported and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 26th day of July 2021. 51 being the amendment to the fee and charge bylaw, 52 the list of road names for 911 civic addressing, 54 Grassmere Road Assumption, Resort Road Assumption, and 55 Ekinswiller 720 Domtar Road rezoning. All in favor of those bylaws? And that carries. I have another bylaw. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Stone. Be it resolved that bylaw 2021-53 be reported and read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 26th day of July 2021, that being the bylaw for Beaver Dam management. Questions? All in favor? And that carries. Previous business and the update we've all been eagerly awaiting. Director Hernan, Streetscape.
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. So I'm happy to be here tonight to bring you an update on where we are with Streetscape. Mark Misko did send his regrets from the district. As you know, he's heavily involved in this project, but couldn't make the meeting tonight. So what I'm here to tell you is not shocking if you're following the schedule. The reality is right now we are between 4 and 6 weeks behind schedule. Originally, this stage of the project, stage 2, which was from Burnell to West Street, was supposed to be completed last week. Obviously, it's not completed. There's still a lot of work to be done in that area. The reason we're behind, no hidden secret, the rain. We've seen 352 millimeters now since June 1st of rain, which is the equivalent of 14 inches. The systems that they're working on are all live. So the storm sewer systems, when we get those heavy downpours for an hour or two, it takes a day or so for it to drain through the system. So they're literally shutting down again and then having to reset pipes and get things going again. So all the systems they're working on are constantly live, and the deluge is causing massive problems. The rain is also causing problems in the septic lines, or the sewage lines, if you will. There's a lot of people still pumping water into the to the waste disposal, as you know, and once again those lines fill to capacity, which means work has to stop on those lines as well. The service connections into the old buildings, we're running 3 new service connections: storm sewer, sewage, and water lines, and they're creating more difficulty than anticipated, and a lot of it is to do with the old stone foundations in some of these buildings. Some of these buildings from many years of remodeling have had new basements installed over top of the stone. So it's not a matter of going through one wall. They're ended up going through 3-4 feet of concrete in some cases to get to where they need to get to. So they're taking much more time, and we're looking for answers for that. And the other problem we're running into is the availability of skilled trades. And I've heard council speaking about it tonight, the shortage of labor. And that has affected the project as well as the material. Our street lights are still on back order. We still can't get them, even though they were ordered back in January, if you will. And it's just that whole trickle effect that we're seeing on it. So we are taking steps to make this time up. The biggest thing is a longer work week with the crews out there with Dufferin. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice they picked up and started to work a Friday shift. They were working 4/12s. They've now picked up the Friday shift as well. Looking to add an additional night shift starting as early as August 9th. So 2 weeks from now, you'll see a night shift being brought in, and the night shift will work from 7 at night till 7 in the morning when the day shift resumes and carries on. They will not be working into the Friday night, Saturday, Sunday period. So there'll be no effect on that regards. And we're also looking long range at the construction schedule to see what we can do. And we're developing what we're calling Plan B. And what Plan B? Well, Plan A, as you know, is to finish the project this year and come back and do the top course of pavement. Plan B, what we're looking at doing now is combining stage 2 and 3. So stage 2 being in front of the town hall, stage 3, if you will, being from West Street to Center Street. And the way the contract is written, they have to complete a stage before we allow them into the next stage, just like we did down at Burnell Road when they came through. But by combining the 2 stages together, the mainline crew, which is pulling the mainline services through, never have to stop. And last time when they came out of the first stage at Burnell, they actually had to stop and wait for the servicing crew to catch up to them. And we lost about 3 weeks worth on the mainline crew. So this way we'll keep that mainline crew working by combining the 2 stages. We are looking at moving our passive construction zones, so the storage materials and pipes. And we've been working with the new owners of the Empire lot to secure space in there. So we'll be able to store the materials there off-site, if you will, to allow the construction to continue. And we are in discussions about delaying stage 4. So that is from Center Street to Lorne, the top end of Main Street, until early spring, depending on the progress on stage 1 and 2. We're still hopeful that we can pick up time and that we can make up the lost time that we have with the number of services we're connecting and some things we're doing different moving forward. But in the event that we don't, we've got to start thinking about what does this look like and what does it affect next year. If that's the case, it means that construction would begin again in early spring as soon as possible. And it would start from Center Street to Lorne to complete the work and then the final load of asphalt. So what you'll see over the next few weeks, next few months, as Scott Oval just mentioned in his report, the announcement about the grant, which is $75,000 worth of funding towards this project. You'll continue to see work right through from Burnell to Center Street. The scaffolding under the bridge is being taken down as we speak. And that scaffolding on the bridge will be gone before this weekend. It's likely will be gone by Thursday. So full boat traffic under the main course of the bridge. The Riverside Park will be cleaned up shortly afterwards. Right now, we're using that as a storage area for scaffolding to assist with getting the scaffolding off the bridge as quick as possible. But then that will be cleaned up shortly afterwards. Kent Park contractor will start. That is done on a separate contractor, as we were talked to council about and indicated. We did go out for a separate bid on that, and that contractor has been selected. That contractor will be starting in there as soon as he's given permission, and we're looking at a mid-August date to start that contractor in there. So at a minimum, by the end of this construction season, and I know people hate it when I talk about winter, but if you think about it, we've only got like 90 days left of construction season, and that'll be looking at the end of October, and we got to start buttoning things up. But by the end of construction season at a minimum, you'll see the swing bridge will be done. You'll see River Street will be done. You'll see Kent Park done. You'll see King Street and the Town Hall ramp area completed and done. And you'll see Main Street from the swing bridge to Center Street done at a minimum. And like I say, our plan is to still and will always be to get to the top of the street. And Dufferin Contracting has assured us that as long as it doesn't snow, they will continue working. So if we get a winter with no snow, we'll have this thing wrapped up by February. If we get snow, we have to shut it down for obvious reasons, but they're prepared to work as late in the season as possible to help make up for some of the lost time. So that's what I'm here to tell you is the fact of the matter is we're 4 to 6 weeks behind. We're taking steps to correct it. And we are putting together a plan B in anticipation that we might need to use it. And if that's the case, we'll bring an update back to council once again, advising them of that. We did have a very short meeting with the executive from the BIA tonight. Just to make them aware of this. And I know that our communications people have some press releases going out that'll speak to this matter as well. So that's in a nutshell, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Steve. I'll go to Councillor Withey first.
Thank you, Worship. This is, of course, disappointing news. I'm surprised that your comments about water and pipes and stuff, you'd think a company like Dufferin that's probably done hundreds of these projects would be able to anticipate this kind of thing that they were going to go through. I mean, I think it's a poor excuse for a delay. Really, the only thing that I could see that was a valid comment was lack of trades workers and perhaps delays in materials. But in any case, my question is mostly around, you mentioned putting an overnight shift in. And I know in past projects, there's always been a lot of people, there's people who live above places along Main Street, and what's the story with working through the night with those people trying to get a night's sleep to get up for their work the next day? Have they been consulted? Are we going to consult with them? You know, the whole point of the way these things go is to be as least disruptive as possible. But an overnight shift from 7 to 7, that's not going to be very welcome news for people that actually live up and down Main Street, I'm assuming.
Steve?
Okay. Through you, Mayor Terziano. So we have not done direct consultation with the residents that live in the area. As we know, many of them do work shift work. We see that from the driving patterns and the car patterns, but you're correct. There is some noise created with an overnight shift, but you know, we don't have the power to extend the work week Monday to Friday and create more days. We have to create more time, and the only time we have available to us is the night shift. If council did not want the night shift, we would certainly be into a Plan B situation, and it would drag the project on longer. We're hoping that it's a 2-week period. It's 8 nights in total, two Monday to Thursday schedules, if you will, that can catch up the mainline crew and get them to where they need to be, so the servicing crew can move on and catch up to them. There will be no interior building work. There will be no store owners asked to stay there till 2 in the morning to allow services to go in or anything like that. In regards to the comments about services, normal in a contract, in any contract, the services are only run to the property line and they stop. And the property line is at the front edge of most of these buildings, which means that we'd be making all the connections on the outside. That was considered. But the problem with that is that the services we're running into are old cast iron pipes, and they're going to fail. And if we don't do the necessary repairs now and get the services, we're going in basically 2 feet, 3 feet inside the property line to make good solid connections. We'll be back digging up these sidewalks time and time again, dealing with one-offs. The contract originally, when we talked about this, was a sewer line connection for sure inside the buildings with provisional items for the other 2 services. And what we have found in there with asbestos pipes and what we found with the cast iron pipes makes it necessary to take all 3 services into the building. And what we're running into is, like I say, stone foundations, which have been re-poured either from the inside or the outside, and just a nightmare of problems that nobody anticipated. And service connections inside the buildings. Some of these older buildings have had multiple plumbing jobs done, and not everything is kosher, if you will, and easy to fix right away.
Follow-up, please. Quick follow-up. So you're saying you're not planning, or we're not planning to discuss this with the people that live on Main Street? We're just going to go ahead and do it unless council says don't do it? Is that what I heard?
That is correct. We are planning to proceed. That's why we're talking to the BIA. It's why we're talking to council right now. It's why we're doing some press releases on it. If I get direction tonight from council that they don't want us to proceed, if they want us to consult, we will stop the process. We will start the consultation process. We'll take whatever time it needs to resolve this. But time is our one thing we don't have a lot of to get this project done.
Steve,
I think we should consult. That's my opinion.
Steve, the noise factor overnight, I know machines make noise, but are they able to mitigate the noise of backup beepers, at least in the overnight? Do you know whether there's been any discussion about that?
I believe the majority of what they will be doing is mainline pipe digging and the connections of the main lines for the storm sewers. I will verify that with the backup beepers and see what can be done if it's required. But it's basically going to be the large digging equipment that's working. I don't believe they'll be trucking material around. They'll be working in the holes, extending the mainline pipes.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, we have to go ahead. There's no question about delaying this. And anytime we can make up, we have to definitely go ahead and do that. One point I wanted to make, Steve, is the the section of Main Street between Burnell Road and West Street, probably in that section, there would probably be at least double the number of connections we would have in the remainder of the project, if I'm not mistaken. Because if you look at the number of stores, the number of businesses in that particular block, okay, between Burnell and between West Street, there's probably, I don't know, maybe Councillor Stone could help me with the numbers, but there are a lot of businesses there. And then when you get to West Street to Center, and then from there up to Lawrence Street, considerably fewer. So I would expect that those connections would take a lot less time once we get to that particular part of the project. Does that sound reasonable to you, Director Herner?
Through you, Mayor Terziano, you're 100% correct. I believe the number is 33 connection points in the section that they're working in now. Once they get past West Street, you're 100% correct. I mean, we're running some services into the old Empire lot. It's just vacant stub offs. The large building that was just retrofitted is fairly simple and easy to do. So there's much less connections through there. The other thing is they're coming out of the ground now. So they've been digging 3 and 4 meters down, and as they travel up the street, they get shallower. So we're not into the same issues that we're into. There'll be a lot less connections. I can tell you that the Center Street intersection itself is about 4 weeks worth of work. It's quite a complicated intersection with the pipes that come down Center and some of the connections in there and what's being done with the traffic lights and turn lanes, but that'll be the next slowdown. But the next section, they should make some good time on. That's what we're counting on. That's what we're trying to get the main line crew to, so they can get ahead of the servicing crew, and we should make good time from there.
Steve, I imagine we could probably get our communication team to get some communication out to the people that live above the stores, though, on Main Street, to let them know that we plan to do some overnight work and that it will be limited to a 2-week period, 4 nights each, just so that they're aware. I mean, I don't agree that we need to go out and consult. We need to get this done, but I think we could certainly get a communication off to them, couldn't we?
We certainly can, Mayor Terziano. And I mean, our communication team has been brought up to speed as of last Friday, and they've been working through the weekend and preparing the notes. That's why they have a press release ready to go as soon as this council meeting is done, laying out some of this stuff, and we will make sure that they ramp up the news on the overnight construction for the limited period of 2 weeks.
And maybe like a hand delivered flyer to some of the doors on Main Street, the upper doors, if we could. Councillor Wiebe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would also suggest we consider as a municipality, maybe some voucher program of some kind, because there may be some people that simply can't deal with a night of construction, 3-4 nights in a row. So we may have to make a little bit of space somehow to accommodate people in other locations, to have a night's sleep somewhere else, because I mean, certain people with certain health issues or what have you, there's a whole array of potential scenarios there, and I think we need to be prepared in that vein.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Steve, for that. We're on to general information. There was council correspondence in your package. Council, just by way of information, we were approached by the Huntsville Lake Bays Chamber of Commerce for a letter of support for the outdoor recreation project that they and another group of people are working on up at the old field at the Lookout, where we had the walking track and stuff this winter. They're still working on the potential to get something done as far as a skating rink up there and stuff. So I provided a letter of support in principle on behalf of council to the project, because it's worth a grant of about $168,000. I can see the clerk, the hand up, so I'm thinking I'm missing something. Tanya?
Thank you, Mayor Terziano. I believe it's under new business, the item we noted earlier regarding the garden.
Yeah, well, I'm not there yet.
It was at new business before general, but at the mayor's discretion.
That's where I was supposed to put that in.
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Well, hang on, let me see. I just threw that away without putting it in. Okay. Now I gotta go and find the resolution. Just a sec, council. I gotta shrink the screen for a minute. Okay, under new business, I need a mover and a seconder. I have a mover and Deputy Mayor Alcock. I need a seconder to suspend the rules of procedure. Councillor Fitzgerald, thank you for that. Be it resolved that the rules of procedure relating to additions to the agenda where no public notice has been provided be suspended to allow for the discussion and consideration of a motion for the request from Kalani Community Garden Group for a letter of support from the town of Huntsville. This is the folks that are in charge of the community garden over in River Mill Park, and they are applying for a grant to replace the fencing around the garden, and they need a letter of support from council in order to apply for one of these grants. So I also have, oh, did I do all in favor when we just suspended the rules? Hang on, all in favor. This is not good when I have two screens. Okay, and that carries. So now I have a resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock, and if I can have a seconder, Councillor Schumacher, thank you. It would read, be it resolved that staff be directed to prepare a letter of support in principle from the town of Huntsville to the Kalani Community Garden Group for their grant application for funding for fencing at the community garden located in River Mill Park. Questions, comments? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I have no problem with this, but I guess the question I do have is with regards to the community gardens people. I mean, last year we heard, first of all, that they wanted to be accessible or more accessible, and number two, that they wanted more space. And so have those two issues been resolved before we go ahead and accompany them in applying for a grant for a fence? Is this fence going to help that situation, or have they given up on the accessibility and or the extra dimensions they need for their garden?
So the last time the discussion about the community garden was to be before council was March of 2020, which is when COVID hit, and it seemed like you know, everything changed so much that was coming up in March, and it didn't. We did talk to the garden people about the potential of moving over by Fairburn there, over on the district water and sewer site. Their first indication was they did not really care for that location. And we never got a chance because of COVID to follow up any further on any other sites or anything. But allowing them the opportunity to apply for a grant for fencing really doesn't mean anything other than they need the fencing where they are now. We pretty much know they're not going anywhere this year. If we do find a location that they're happy with and we're happy with, fencing can be moved. So I don't think it would be for naught. Does that answer your question pretty much, or?
No, it doesn't. But then you're right. The issue is not to do with what I brought up, but more to do with the fencing. So I'm trying to steer us off topic, I think, here, Your Worship. So I think you've steered me right back to where we should be.
Councillor Stone.
Thanks very much. So just to be clear, the second part of this motion is to rescind the desire to find a larger location. Is that?
That has been struck. The motion was only.
Was furthermore?
There's no and further to it. This is simply a letter of support for them to apply for a grant for fencing. Nothing else.
Okay, then to further my comment, I don't believe that our busiest waterfront park is the right place for a community garden. But if this is only to support funding or an application to get funding for a fence that could potentially be moved, I have no trouble with that. I would like to investigate with them other possibilities. We're building a new greenhouse over at the Heritage Place, and maybe there's room over there, or there's many others within walking distance that I think would be wonderful. But if I would like to hear the motion again, actually, if you don't mind.
I will read it again, and I agree with you that that this location may not be the proper location permanently for them. It may be, it may not be. But wherever the garden is, it will need to be fenced. So the resolution says, be it resolved that staff be directed to prepare a letter of support in principle from the town of Huntsville to the Claney Community Garden Group for their grant application for funding for fencing at the community garden located in River Mill Park. Deputy Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may add, I know that the discussion, and we're not having the discussion about the garden being there or not there or whatever, but the last time they did present, their preference was the River Mill Park, but they were very clear that they did want to make it accessible. That hasn't gone away, but they also wanted to clean it up, and getting new fencing, which is quite attractive. Seen the fencing elsewhere. It is far more attractive than what they have there now. There's been a whole lot of vandalism in the community garden. So I think that I know for a fact a couple of the members have been trying very hard in trying to get grant funding to build the fence. They're not asking us to build it, they're trying to get grant funding. The problem they've been facing is that they're not officially a not-for-profit. And even though they're not there for profit. So that's the need for a letter from a recognized institution like our municipality to say, we recognize the good work that this garden has been doing, which it has been doing very good work, feeding the homeless and feeding or, providing food to the food bank, a lot of good things. So our letter should say that, and say that it's been playing a very good not-for-profit role in our community. And I would support what the mayor has said, which is if the conversation further down the road, they agree that maybe a new location might be better. When that takes place, the new fencing can be moved. This is not something that it's there, that's it, done. But they also need the decision. This was the reason for the last minute, is a couple of the application deadlines are the end of July, and they didn't know that. So that's the reason for the emergency motion tonight. So I thought that was important to say.
Thank you for that. So, all in favor of the motion? And that carries. Okay. That brings me back to where I was, which is another letter of support that we've already written and issued without a council resolution because it was a letter of support in principle. I don't know whether we blame the people that put out the grants with short deadlines or the organizations that are applying wait to the last minute, but it seems like we have to put out a lot of fires when they get to us. So that councils for information on the Lake of Bays one. COVID-19 updates. I know we talked a little bit about this before, but as far as our reopening, the Canada Summit Center open by appointment. Summer camps over at the Summit Center are running. Outdoor recreation programs, baseball, soccer, tennis, pickleball, they are running. MHP is open by appointment. The 2021 Ironman 70.3 will be back, will be taking place on August 29th in Huntsville. We have a contract with that organization to run it, and they've been given the green light by the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit that as long as we stay in step 3 or better, they are good to go. So I guess there'll be some information going out to the residents in that area for Sunday, August 29th for the Ironman. Apparently their numbers are down about half though of what they they would have been 2 years ago. Centennial Pool is open by registration for lane swims and aquafit. Lessons continue at the beaches. The Ice in the Jack Beyond Arena scheduled to go in August 3rd. The Ice in the Don Lock scheduled to go in after the vaccination center is finished, which I'm hearing rumblings may be before the end of August. And meeting spaces, events, community halls, they, as they just pointed out earlier, are taking inquiries. And it says information still to be announced on the Algonquin Theatre, but Simone gave us a bit of an update there, and indoor recreation and senior programs. That's the COVID-19 update. Won't it be nice when we don't have that anymore? We have District of Muskoka update. Councillor Withey, Health Services.
Thank you, Worship. We met July 22nd. There was a presentation by Hospice Muskoka looking for a letter of support for a proposal to increase the funding for the number of beds at Andy's Place in Port Carling. I didn't object to this, although I think that, knowing how these things work with my time on the LHIN, the Huntsville Algonquin Grace Hospice has been pre-approved for another bed since I was on the LHIN. So they've already built a bigger place, so they're just trying to get funding there. It does kind of work in a line, but we went ahead and did that anyways, which was fine. Paramedic Services talked about the public access defibrillator program, where places that have defibrillators, and they talked about where they are, the public ones, and if you have a business like mine that has a defibrillator in my office, you can make that known to them, and during office hours, if there's an emergency in the parking lot, it's there for them to use. That's important for people to know if they've got a business themselves and want to make their defibrillator available to the public. The Muskoka Area Ontario Health Team is still moving forward. You may recall that was the thing that sort of came out of the MAST thing that didn't really go anywhere, and Dr. Matthews is involved, whatever. So that's continuing on. There was discussion about how long these things take to get up and running, and they take a long time. So that was a lot. We had our usual updates about COVID. We had our usual updates about what's going on with the Pines and the case mix and things like that. Everything's still in good shape, all things considered, as far as what's going on with COVID and seniors residences. I did ask if there was any updates on Fairburn, and what I heard is that everything's proceeding nicely. I really didn't get a lot of details, but there's, they're working towards getting everything buttoned down and going. So, and that was about it.
Any questions? Okay, Councillor Thompson, Engineering and Public Works.
Yes, indeed, Your Worship. We had a fairly short meeting in a way, but a couple of items that were of great interest. One of them sort of ties in a way with what Director Hernan was talking about earlier today. And it turns out that the District of Muskoka does not have what we call cross-connection control within the district. And this is potentially a dangerous situation where municipal water is going into a residence or a house, and that water could be somehow reversed back into the system again. And residences, for the most part, are not really a major concern. those that might be on an irrigation system could be of a bit of a concern, according to Director Marcus Furman. But where there is some concern are with institutional and some industrial businesses. For instance, one that sort of resonated was, for instance, a funeral home, for instance, okay, and you know what kind of chemicals and so on and so forth. And I have no idea what they would be, but I think we all have a sort of an idea. But that would be one, or there might be an industrial concern or whatever, where they're using chemicals as well. And that could be a service station, or you can imagine what they would be. So the resolution that came out of it was that the district be authorized to develop a cross-connection control program in collaboration with the lower tier municipalities. So the district will then be in touch with Director Hernan and Manager Bocock and Brandon Hall and so on and so forth to deal with you know, how this would go about and where they should be where they should be looked after or considered. And the other thing that is of consideration, I should say, was the fact that we went through the user fees and charges related to engineering and public works for 2022. And these charges, as you can appreciate, were based on the CPI index for the 12 months ended April 21 of 1.9%, and the average of the Stats Canada non-residential building construction price, which is a 2.6%, which is surprising in a sense, because generally construction indexes, in my experience in the past, anyway, have been considerably more than that. So, but anyway, it's going to result in increases across the board, but marginal for the most part. And the impact on, we talked with CAO Stevens with regards to this, and the impact that this would have on the tax rate. They figure would be in the 2.5% range for district next year. That's sort of a guesstimate at this point, type of thing. So those are the main things, other than the fact we, you know, we did issue some contracts and so on and so forth for different projects around the district. So that's it. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Any questions? Then we will move to Deputy Mayor. Oh, hang on. Councillor Withey, question?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering, it seems that we've hit pothole season in July. I was wondering if there is an update on getting around and getting those things taken care of. I know places that I've been even today are still in dire need of help.
Yeah, good question, actually, Councillor, and I think we've all experienced that. In talking to Mark Misko and Director Misko at the district and so on and so forth, and primarily, I don't think our municipal roads are in that bad a shape. I mean, we've had some serious problems as a result of the last major deluge we had. I guess it was a week ago Thursday, where we lost the entire hill on East Westchester Lake Road. We had another big washout on, lost a culvert on Williamsport Road and that kind of thing. But the majority of the problems that I'm seeing are on district roads. And the biggest one is Etwell Road. It's a disaster. And it's being worked on. It's due for reconstruction this year. So it's actually starting this month, as a matter of fact. And I know the area that I try to avoid too, Councillor Withey, is that stretch of Muskoka Road 2, Ravenscliff Road between Center Street and Highway 11, because there's some pretty serious problems along there too. But most of these are attributable to the fact that, as we heard from Director Hernan, we've had 302 millimeters of rain in a very short period of time. And of course, that contributes in great parts to road deterioration and potholes. I mean, you can fill a hole today and a big rainstorm comes along and it's taken care of, you know, it's back the next day type of thing, right? So, yeah. So you're right, there's some problems out there. It's not that the district's not aware of it or the town's not aware of it. We are, and we're doing everything we can to try to stay ahead of it.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may. The reason I asked the question now, Councillor Thompson, is because it is district roads. I think our municipal roads are in really good shape, thanks to our team. I would add Muskoka Road 23 is, it seems like crews went through, and then there's still some, it's pretty messy as well. And, you know, we're expecting another big rainstorm tomorrow. So this is climate change in action. And I think we're going to have to seriously look at, you know, maybe different ways of doing things in the future. Thanks.
Well, interestingly enough, we are trying to be as proactive as we can, at least here at the town level. Councillor Stone and I were out on North Drive with Manager Bulcock and Director Hernan last week. We're seeing a new application on existing streets, okay, that adds to the life of those streets. And there are different applications. The district is using a system called microfiber, and they use that on Burnell Road. You might have seen that applied, I think, last year. What we're seeing the preferred application from Manager Bulcock is Reclamate and variations of that type of thing, depending on the condition of the road and the kind of surface that's there now. So we are trying to be proactive and extend the life of our streets and our roads and stuff like that. But you're right, some of the district roads are in deplorable shape. They're aware of it, and I think, like everyone else, challenged by the amount of bad weather we've had this year, which is just complicating the issue.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Alcock, now you can do planning.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I just echo the comments made by Councillor Withey as to some of the district roads. They are indeed in rough. I'll try and be really brief. We had a really interesting presentation from the Vice Chair and Chair of the Gravenhurst Against Poverty group, who are proposing, their members are proposing to acquire the Ing building in Gravenhurst, and for the purpose of providing 10 affordable housing units, 2 emergency shelters, a community hub, community kitchen, and a young adult center. Really, and a lot of work needs to go into it. A lot of funding needs to happen. They're applying for all sorts of grant funding, but they're also looking to the district to support a number of the units within that building. So they've already reached out and to create partnerships with a number of organizations. Those are looking very good. They've been successful at raising $270,000 already just from their own membership. And it's much further along in some respects than any of us thought it would be. So we're going to try and do everything we can to move that project further and assist them with their other grant applications. That was very exciting. Under housing, Sandra Daleman spoke to the awarding of grant applications with respect to the Social Services Relief Fund tranche number 3. It's probably the last one that will go out for all of the organizations doing things in response to COVID, around homelessness, around, you know, towards the Salvation Army in Huntsville, and all of the other organizations, community living, who have received funding through that. What I really wanted to mention was Jackie McTice did a report, a fantastic report on the district's 10-year housing and homelessness plan and their annual report for 2021 to the province. They're required to provide an update annually because we are the housing service manager. And some of it is depressing because no matter how much money we throw at this, no matter how many programs we develop, the need is not diminishing, it is growing. But the number of the amount of funding that is now flowing towards the various homelessness and housing programs is now over $11 million, whether it be from the province or from the district. The province, their grant funding is actually decreasing, and the district is increasing over the last couple of years. But I honestly would implore all of you to read the report that was submitted to the province. It's a fantastic read, full of data as to our new issues, but also on the new programs and what the district is doing, and including all of the stuff from the Housing Task Force, whatever. But there's a lot happening, and even though, you know, we can do a whole lot more, it's a really good read. So that I thought was important to note. We had a couple of other items under planning. One of note is we granted an exception to the water and sewage capacity allocation strategy for a draft plan of subdivision in Bracebridge because it is the development of an affordable housing, it's all relative, but affordable housing community. And under our official plan, if there is a new affordable housing community, exceptions can be made to the sewer and water allocation strategy, which is kind of important to know if we want to do that in Huntsville. Last item worth note is we had a quick update from our old staff member, Elizabeth Reimer, doing her first presentation at the district. And it was on a proposed Muskoka official plan amendment. That's my report.
Thanks for that. I did read the housing report. You're right. It was a very good read. It's amazing how much money has been thrown at the issue of housing and how we're not making any headway at all. It's really scary. But you know, for me, when I read it, I hear a lot from people about the lack of affordable housing in our community and the impact it has on people not being able to work here. And I sit there and I say, well, what can we do better? And then I read what the district has been doing and how much money's been put at it, and then we're not making a dent. And I don't know what we can do better. The need is just greater than the finances that we have. But you're right, it is good read. Everybody should look at it. I had a question on the capacity exemption for affordable housing, though. So the capacity grants are for 50 units per time, correct? So
think
is this,
so.
so is
Yeah.
this exception for more than 50 units then?
It's a good question.
Affordable houses coming online in Bracebridge.
It was within one, it was the loon called Clearbrook Trail. And I apologize, Your Worship, I can't remember the number, but it would certainly not be greater than the number that they would be afforded, right? But they felt that they could do it. So I wish I had an answer. I don't. I apologize.
No problem. Are there any other questions? Sorry, I jumped in there. Okay. So I had finance and corporate services. We had the audit presentation from BDO, and we okayed the financial statements. We had the reserve fund statutory annual report. We had a lot of money going on. We had a loader replacement expenditure, and you know, it was all technical financial stuff, nothing extremely exciting. At council, we had the OPP. We're at district council with the presentation on the opioid crisis in Muskoka and actually in Simcoe as well. This crisis, they were very informative. I think that part of the district meeting was probably close to an hour by the time we did questions and answers. We had some contract awards. We had the Southern Georgian Bay OPP Detachment Board composition approved. That's the one that district's involved in. And as far as Huntsville goes, the district assumed the water and wastewater services on Forbes Hill from the town of Huntsville, which the town put in back in 2010 during the G8. And that was sort of the highlights of district council. We had some more discussion on the airport, and I won't go into that. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of our meeting. We have no closed session. And I have a resolution moved by Counselor Withy and seconded by Counselor Stone. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2021-56 be received, numbered, and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 26th day of July, 2021. All in favor? And that carries. And I have a resolution moved by Deputy Mayor Alcock, seconded by Counselor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 7:49 PM. All in favor? And that carries. See everyone at 9 AM Wednesday morning.